All right, and we're live. And because we had an outage earlier with StreamYard, and because Rodney is not here, when you hit live, our intros are missing. And so that's probably a good thing. Um, welcome everybody to the Jira Life. Today we have a special guest. We have the head of product, Jira, Dave, joining us. Thank you so much for being here. And before we get into the conversation, Dave, I just wanted to throw a quick shout out to our sponsor, Revyz, for backing us up, having our back, and backing up Jira. So thank you, Revyz. Check out those links down in the description. And with that, I have my lovely wife, Lina, and the amazing Dave, and we're going to have some fun today. Dave, where are you tuning in from today? Where in the world are you at?
I am based in Boise, Idaho.
Nice. I've never been.
For about 5 years.
I have a friend. She has a house up in Idaho, and her family has like 100 acres or something like that. And they live completely off grid. Like they need to chop trees to warm up their water, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, well, I don't know about 2025 and living that life.
No, I live 10 minutes walk from downtown Boise, probably the single most population dense square mile of the entire state.
Nice. So you've been at Atlassian for a while.
13 years. Just hit my 13th year anniversary last month.
That though, for Atlassian, I mean, it's hard to forget that sometimes Atlassian's a 20-year company, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also hard to remember or hard to forget that, like, for somebody to be there that long, like, we're talking with the legend here.
I've been very lucky in many ways in my life, but that is one of the top ones.
How has your role with Jira been different than some of the other things you've done over your career?
So for context, I took this role as the head of product for Jira. I think a little under 18 months ago, and I'd been on. I took a 6-month sabbatical prior to returning to Atlassian and taking this role. And for the 5 years prior to that, I had been working on. I worked on Atlassian Guard, and then more of a lot of what you see in admin.atlassian.com today. I helped launch the Jira, all of the products, premium and enterprise plans, and then took on more of our portfolio around data residency and the release tracks, how we do change management, change controls, BYOK, and I certainly can't claim credit for Atlassian Government Cloud, but I set a lot of the wheels in motion there. And coming back to Jira was like an absolute breath of fresh air to me, because I'd forgotten like how fun it is to really work on a product. Like the way I think about our platform investments, those shared investments that show up in all of our products, it's like those are enabling our products to, be more competitive or meet like the checklist that our enterprise customers have, or they're trying to like make it Atlassian a little bit more efficient in how we build stuff, or a little bit more compliant or legally secure, or whatever else we have to do in order to like scale to 300,000 plus customers. But it's the products that are actually solving the problems for people. And so to actually talk to customers about like, what are the problems that you are having in your organization, which is different than what check marks do we need to deliver to your security team so that you're allowed to buy Jira, is super fun. And like just getting into the details of what Jira has been and what it can be has been super rewarding. My counterparts, the design leader and head of engineering for Jira, are also folks that we worked together on Jira a decade ago. And so I think we have a kind of unique perspective where now the kids are in charge now, and we feel more unleashed than ever to try to evolve Jira into the future and make sure that we're lucky that Jira has existed for 20 years. Most software products that is not true for, and we feel a lot of responsibility to make sure that Jira continues to exist for another 20 years.
Yeah, no, it's funny and entertaining and interesting all at the same time, because Jira is such a product that when you look at your competition, either people really, really hate it, not Jira, but the competing tools, or they've died out, right? Like they fizzled out with time. But Jira is like, it's right there. It's I've lived, like I built my livelihood. My kids are my
Yeah.
Yep.
And for me, coming back to 13 years at Atlassian, like, I tell people when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, like, I didn't grow up dreaming of one day working in team collaboration software. But it's actually been a thing where the longer I've spent at Atlassian, the more I've bought into the, when I joined Atlassian, it's just another tech company building software for software developers. Like, hopefully I'll go learn something about software development so that I can go do something else. And, what I've learned every year, and it's been reinforced, is, oh my gosh, there are so many people who are, where Jira and Atlassian's products have really unlocked something for them at their organization, or made like their way of working a little bit better. And like, we built this community of people who are willing to evangelize and like show Jira is absolutely a product that is like reliant on great, a great administrator is the difference between Jira being like loved and beneficial to a company versus being like a tax and a weapon used by a company against its employees. And it's the thing that keeps me going is the opportunity to help make those folks successful. And like, I continue to be like inspired by the people that are willing to do the evangelism of Jira on our behalves.
Yeah, and millions of people that use this tool, hundreds of thousands of companies, right? And my opening statement, Dave, I wanted to tell you. So my opening statement was, first of all, I was gonna have a scroll of all of the complaints, but then everybody's like, no, that might be too mean. So I was like, all right,
Take the full hour.
So then plan B was about an hour and a half ago, StreamYard actually went down, right? And we were scrambling, we were freaking out. We're like, what do we do? I told my wife, you know what? I'm gonna take a nap real quick.
And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm gonna go fix this.
So we decided to go with Ecamm Live, and I am here like nap subsued because I wasn't allowed to take my nap, trying to figure out how do we make this meeting happen, right? And the UI was attacking me. I felt under attack from all the pop-ups and screens and options that I had available to me. And I was gonna come out, start swinging, saying like, this new UI, it ain't working for me for Jira. But after seeing that, chef's kiss and masterpiece on what you guys have done here. Because when you walk into Jira, you don't feel overwhelmed. You don't feel like the tool's yelling at you. You don't feel like it's screaming and like overwhelming you. And I didn't appreciate it until like an hour and a half ago.
That's very generous of you. I think that it's actually something we've invested in a lot across Atlassian over the last year or so. I don't deserve any of the credit besides making sure that Jira onboarded onto but we built actually a much more intelligent system for coordinating pop-ups and messages, and we're trying to make sure that we can scale to a large number of customers that are using Jira and all different ways. And we want to ship a lot of new things to help solve problems for customers. And, at the same time, very cognizant that most of the time when you're coming into Jira, you already know what you want to do. And anything that's a pop-up or a distraction or hey, check out this, or this button move from A to B, is actually just getting in your way. And so we built a much smarter system for coordinating those messages so that we try to avoid those feelings of being oh, I just clicked one thing and then another thing popped up over here. I still think there's room for improvement, but that's nice of you to say.
Well, again, I've been probably one of the most vocal people on the internet about how I have not been happy with the UI. But again, until you see something that's worse, holy moly.
So we were talking about this earlier. I'm not an admin, right? I'm a user of Jira. So I see the world in a whole different way than Alex does, because Alex is an admin, right? So I was like, for me, whatever's there makes sense, but not for him and for all the other admins.
The admins know what it could be.
Well, the thing is, you built muscle memory, right? And I spend 12 hours a day in the tool, 5 days a week, and I can walk you through that. In fact, last week I lost my internet, and I was running everybody with my eyes closed through the entire Jira UI because they were still in the old UI. Right. And so for me, I had this thing so memorized that have you ever seen that scene in Transformers when Shia LaBeouf is like writing all these hieroglyphics on the walls and stuff? Like, that's me. I can walk you through the entire Jira UI. And when I dream at night, I dream of Jira tickets. It's kind of sad. It's more sad than it is funny. But
no judgment here.
But then you go change the button placement, and I'm like, well, that's not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, like that's one of the things that I think we really struggled with and thought hard about with the new UI. It's like, obviously, like we need to have a really high bar for why we would change anything or change like the way that you accessed something. Like, I think, hopefully every change we made was for a good reason, but we do make a genuine effort to try to balance. Like, we don't just move the cheese around for fun.
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm convinced. So I'm convinced of two things. One, you moved it around just to upset me. But two, here's my theory.
Except for you personally.
Me personally, but I would love. Okay, so here's my theory. This has been a running thing in my head for 2 years. When you delete a project, okay, it goes to the trash, right? And when you go to the trash, you can permanently delete it. And you do this because you needed to free up your key. However, the more work items you have in there, the longer it takes to delete. And so my conspiracy is that somebody at Atlassian is manually deleting issue one by one, because they can take up to like 24 hours for a project to disappear. Myth or truth?
I'd have to look into it. I don't know what I talked to the engineering managers, but I don't know what they're doing under the surface.
I'm telling you, something's up, because those projects take way too long to disappear. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure somebody's going in there and just like 1,000 at a time, delete.
Oh, we should probably look into it. Realistically, I think if you want a serious answer to that question, like, one of the things that makes Atlassian distinct relative to, like, a lot of the other Jira competitors versus Atlassian competitors, like folks that are either doing like task and work and project tracking, is that they're a single product company, right? And so the average Jira work item is connected and replicated in a lot of different systems inside of our platform, so that we can, when you're in Confluence and you search, like hit the insert button to search for Jira issues, we have like a index store of recently viewed Jira work items for that user, right? And like that's what hopefully makes some of the magic happen across Atlassian's stack. But it also means that, like, all right, there's actually, and one of the big challenges for, I think, our customers moving from server data center to cloud over the last 5 years has been like, all right, you have that conception of, okay, I have my Jira application and my Jira database, and then when I move to cloud, I'll just have my Jira database in the cloud, and Atlassian will manage it for me, and I don't have to run Jira upgrades. And like the reality is that our cloud architecture is substantially different, and like, well, you do kind of have a virtual database. We also have hundreds of other data stores. And so when you delete a project, we actually have to coordinate like deleting all the content out of a lot of different data stores.
That makes more sense than my theory of somebody out there, just poor soul, whose job is to just delete 1,000 issues at a time. I like to think, though, that somebody's out there just clicking one at a time.
I mean, I'd probably be getting asked why we haven't made that a AI agent at that point. Surely we can get a robo agent to
I know, right? Yeah. That's when you know life got serious, when like those projects delete like that, because robo's in full effect. But yeah, so the UI, that's been a good change. I didn't want to ask you, so you guys had a business project, right? And the placement of the project settings was very beautifully put on a top right corner of Jira's UI. But now you guys moved over to this action menu on the left. What was some of the thought process behind hiding a button that is so important in the submenu somewhere?
You mean to get to the project settings?
Yeah, just to get to the project settings has just drastically changed so much that like everybody I've spoken to, they're like, where did it go? And I'm like, it's there, but they really did a good job at
I think that
hiding
was
it.
one of the, just from a moving the cheese around perspective, potentially like one of the biggest changes we made was just and we saw it in the data kind of going. One thing I would say is, now that we've rolled out the new navigation and the visual redesign to the bulk of our customer base, and officially called it generally available, is we had a closed early access program that we ran through the Atlassian community back in we started dog fooding it internally at Atlassian in about August, and then we started our early access program in late November. And we had about 6 to 8 weeks of feedback from a set of enterprise customers, small and medium-sized customers, marketplace partners, some of our solutions partners that all gave us feedback. And then we ran an open beta program as well, starting in late January, early February. So the good thing is that by the time we made the decision to call it GA at the end of March, we knew what the changes and behaviors were, and like none of the feedback that we've gotten since the end of March has really surprised us, because we've gotten all of it and we accepted those trade-offs when we made the decision to roll it out. And so yeah, we totally saw that visits to the settings pages are way down. Well, that makes sense. We definitely made it harder to get to the settings. I think the thinking there is one, ultimately, obviously it's a change in the behavior that you have to learn if you're somebody who's going to the settings pages regularly, which I think a lot of administrators are. On the other hand, ultimately, yes, it's maybe compared to how we had it in Jira Work Management, where it was a single button. It's all right, you have to click the context menu and then click to the settings button. But we didn't meaningfully make the journey to getting to the settings page actually harder. So it's once you learn the new navigation, hopefully it's not going to really dramatically affect your day-to-day productivity. And then the other investment that we've made a lot more substantially over the course of the last 12 months, and we'll continue to be pushing on, is bringing more of the configuration in line as well. And I think there's a challenge there that we need to solve still with the team managed and company managed projects, but especially for team managed projects where it's more easily possible, allowing you to add a new field or a new issue type or edit the workflow without even going to the settings. Ideally, most of the things that you need to configure or change, you can do while you work rather than configuring it as a setting.
Yeah. I will tell you, I've been spending a lot of time in Confluence lately, and I'm really appreciating the unison and experience between the design there, right? Because I don't feel like I'm in two very opposite tools now. They feel very fluid and seamless to me now.
That made a lot of Atlassian designers really happy to hear you say that. I would say that was one of our motivations for the entire new visual design language and the new navigation, but we were pretty clear internally that if the only reason we were doing it was to make Jira and Confluence more consistent, or software projects and business projects more consistent in Jira, that wasn't a good enough reason to force to make a big change in the UI for all of our existing users. And so we needed to make sure that there were some meaningful improvements in the day-to-day usage of the products that we thought users would truly benefit from. And that's why so that drove a lot of the thinking around having the ability to star your most commonly asked, one of the big differences between the average Jira user and the average Jira administrator is that administrators spend a lot of time going in and out of all of the different projects in Jira. Most users are only active in one or two projects. And so being able to be all right, every time I go to Jira, I'm actually just trying to get to this one project. And hopefully people use browser bookmarks. Like, no. But if you don't, then it's like, you're a less frequent Jira user, and it's like I go to Jira, and then I always have a hard time finding like where to go to get to the project that I actually like need to go create work in, or check the board for it. And like being able to like start that, I think is important. Like obviously we know that not everybody uses all the features, or they use features in different ways, or some organizations use a lot of apps, some organizations don't use any apps, and so being able to like hide the things that you don't use helps manage the like visual complexity of Jira.
So in on that topic, right? So Jira is being pushed to be the one tool for everyone, business, marketing, software,
Legal,
for everybody,
supply chain, everybody.
right? What is the thought process? Because usually everybody thinks Jira is the tool for software, right? So how is it that Atlassian is helping customers that are not in the software or the technical realm move forward and accept Jira as a tool for everybody?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think maybe three parts to that answer. One, Atlassian doesn't have a lot of uniquely innovative ideas that we come up with all by ourselves. Like, Atlassian's best ideas usually are born out of talking to our customers and looking at how they already use our products. So we probably wouldn't have pushed in the direction of using Jira for all of these different use cases outside of software development if we didn't already believe that Atlassian is already doing that. Many of our customers are already doing that. We've heard that, we know that our customers can be successful. So we were already learning from our own use cases and the use cases of our customers, and saying like, all right, how do we lean into that trend? And like, that's not a new thing for Atlassian. Like 13 years ago, a lot of our customers are using Jira for IT help. Maybe we should build a nice web portal for them to collect those IT help desk tickets, and like that became Jira Service, the customer portal, and Jira Service Desk, and ultimately what's Jira Service Management today, right? So that's one factor. The second factor is I think there's a bigger trend outside of Atlassian, where a lot of knowledge workers outside of software are becoming more structured and diligent in how work is being tracked, and like graduating beyond Excel spreadsheets is the way to keep track of like who's working on what. And like that's definitely not Atlassian's customers are doing it, but it's definitely not unique to Atlassian's customers. Like there's products like Monday.com that like certainly are like also riding that wave, and like would probably exist with or without Jira or Atlassian doing anything at all, and having a lot of success. And so I think we're trying to lean into a trend that's already existing just in how people are working. And then the third and probably biggest motivator is the Atlassian system of work. And I think where Atlassian truly is trying to differentiate itself is saying like, we are not just a solution for the software development team or for the IT service team. And actually like what you should ultimately take away from system of work is that Atlassian's thinking really hard about how every single team in the company can work together. And we're realistic that we are not going to like personally solve all the software for every single team. I think there's only one company in the world that believes that they're going to do that. But like we are going to try to build like a comprehensive system that like solves for the needs of like lots of different types of knowledge worker teams within an organization. And if you believe that, and you believe that like work is one of those fundamental objects that like all knowledge workers are ultimately doing, then we felt like we needed to have one app that is the place that you go to in the Atlassian system to plan, track, and manage work. And so,
But doesn't your work become more flat at that point if you treat everything as just work?
Can you expand?
Because one of the beautiful things that I loved about Jira was the eloquency and just how well it allowed you to be an agile team, right? Specifically in Scrum, right? But I feel like the new demographic that you're going after doesn't necessarily subscribe to the agile methodology. So the hierarchies of epics and stories and subtasks is less relevant because people just think of everything as a task, as a single unit, and not so much as a. Because when I envision my thing, I'm like, we're looking at a project, we have initiatives, we have epics and stories, and then subtasks, right? Like I'm helping teams, I'm coaching teams to think through holistically for a very big deliverable. But most teams, especially again these non-technical teams, they just have things to do. But it's linear. It's like 2-dimensional versus 3D. That I like to say that Jira is like Mario in 3D and Trello is like Mario in 2D. But aren't we taking a step back by making Jira more open to everybody?
That's a really good question. Like if I think about the non-technical teams that were using Jira in maybe like let's say since we introduced Jira software, so like 2015, 2016 to 2019, 2020.
Yeah, I'm often reminded that Green
launched
Hopper
Jira
whatever
management in early 2021. So like
yeah.
that 5-year period, right? The non-technical teams that were using Jira software at that time, we're the ones that I think were willing to embrace agile and some of the what you just described, Alex, is like the 3D way of tracking work. And like, I think that there's a lot of truth to the fact that like software development teams like thought really hard about process, and like agile is a much more mature way to think about how do we plan and track and break down work and deliver value incrementally than putting a bunch of to-do items in an Excel spreadsheet and like sending it around on Monday morning. And so the teams that were willing to adopt Jira software for their use cases that weren't software development were the teams that were willing to like embrace that. And they kind of put aside like, oh, what's this thing that's called releases, or we don't really need the GitHub or Bitbucket integration, but because we're not actually, for creating pull requests. Yeah. But we like having epics and we like having sprints, and frequently in order for those types of teams to be successful, you needed a guide, like a handhold to be like, all right, like ignore that, use this, like I'll help you set it up. Because like the reality is like what that implies is that like for a lot of non-technical teams, like as much as they would likely benefit from some of the maturity that the average healthy agile software development team has in terms of their planning and tracking, like they just can't get there. And so like the way I would look at it more is we're trying to build like the entry points. Like if you look at some of our competitors that are more explicitly targeting exclusively like the non-technical teams, or started with non-technical teams, like they really did start with like a flat list. And so then if you look at Jira and like what if we kind of emphasized in Jira over the last 12 months, it's like, all right, we're going to give you that flat list, and we're going to give you something that kind of looks and feels like a spreadsheet so that we can help you get started. And our hope is certainly that we can, we know that the power and the real value of Jira is that like, hey, like this kind of task is not like this kind of task, and like you actually have a different process for these two tasks. Well, in Jira you can actually like define two different types, two different work types, issue types, right? And you can actually attach a different workflow to each issue type, and you can actually have a different set of fields that you capture for each one of those work types. And that's the unique and differentiated power of Jira. But if we just took the average marketer and threw them into Jira. Like, yeah, maybe like there's a small sliver of like the really advanced, like the Atlassian's marketers that were like, they're all in and they're embracing it. They're going to embrace it. But like the 9 out of 10, like, I think we needed to reach them where they're at rather than hoping they would come around to the Jira way and then hopefully like graduate them into some more mature.
Yeah, I see your point. Like, it's easier to convince them to evolve a little bit if they got their feet wet and in there already, versus trying to buy them in and go, no, I don't want to even touch it because it doesn't solve my use case.
And that's why I'm super excited about the power of AI, of agents, and seeing a bunch of different threads come together. Atlassian's investments in like the teamwork, the team playbook, and our teamwork lab, in terms of like having a lot of science and research and thinking on like how teams can work together better, and like how to plan and track work and align work to goals, like the things that are at the core of the system of work principles, with using AI to surface those contextually to teams as they're using the product to try to help them iterate on their practices. You're going to see a lot of the most investment we've made in a long time coming to like the in-product help section of Jira over the next 12 months, because we're going to really be focused on like how do we get the average non-technical team to really not just try out Jira, but like make Jira stick. We know that if you have a great admin, they can help make Jira stick, but not everybody has a great admin, so we got to do a little of the work on our side too.
And yeah, and that's also why. So at Team 25, when I was talking to Mike MCB, one of the questions I asked him, like, why do team managed projects exist? And it wasn't until he gave me his answer of like, we're trying to find this balance where we understand, like me, who again I spend way too many hours in Jira. I can walk through this whole tool and guide anybody through the tool, but then there's new teams and new companies that are new to it, and then they need to be able to get in there and be productive and feel effective with it, but can't be overwhelmed by it, right? Because Jira can be very overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think, I've been thinking about team managed projects for.
We don't use that word in this podcast.
But the person who accused me of being the person that started team managed projects was correct.
Wait, was that you? You started this?
Yeah, I was the initial PM on the team managed project.
Oh man, is there a way to stop the podcast now? I'm just kidding.
We called it a code name at the time, and then I think it was
Next Gen. No, and then we went to Next Gen.
We had an internal code name before the public name of Next Gen. And like I think I moved on right basically when we launched like the first public version of Next Gen, but there was probably 18 months of development that went in. 2 years ago and went into it before that. Not a great example of agile delivery, but but it really did come from a belief. Like in 2016, we had 7, 8, 9, 10 years of feedback that people found configuring Jira really hard. And complicated. And it was tough to get. We called it the complexity cliff, right? Like Jira is pretty simple. If you just create a blank new project, like there's not that many fields that are there by default. You get like to do in progress done as the workflow, and you get landed on a blank board or a blank backlog, and there's a cursor there to say like start filling in issues on the backlog or cards on the board, and then you can quickly build a lot of complexity into it. And what I think a lot of administrators have gone through is you come into a new Jira environment that hasn't been well maintained, and it's like, oh, there's corrupt everywhere, there's abandoned projects, there's way too many fields, there's way too many workflows, and you have to do a lot of rationalization. And I think ultimately, like the core belief is that at the end of the day, that if with persistent effort, an admin could really understand like the power of the schemes, and the power of like the configuration and how all the objects map together. But if you wanted to go from all right, my blank Jira project, I want to add one field, or I want to make one small change to the workflow. You had to learn all of it, and like that's the cliff in the complexity cliff, right? And we want a more gradual process of mastery of Jira configuration, and ultimately, like the way schemes are designed is, I think, ultimately like relatively unintuitive. You have to be thinking a lot about how each scheme relates to each other and how each scheme is associated with a project, more or less in your head, or you're writing it down, or like diagramming it on a Confluence,
that's my life, Dave. That's
Confluence
my
page.
Life.
And so like the thesis is ultimately that like team managed projects, like being able to configure the scope of a single project allows us to kind of decouple like a lot of the complexity that comes from how do you manage different configuration objects that like are shared across projects, right? Like that's what makes a team managed project distinct under the surface, is that none of the workflow, the screens, the the set of issue types are all unique to that one project. Would I say that we've nailed the execution over the past 7 years? No. I think and that's definitely coloring how we're going to invest in team managed projects going forward.
And how much of that involves like Rovo helping, right? Let me rephrase. How do you see the role of the Jira admin then evolving as the ship? Because I fear team managed projects as a Jira admin because you don't need me anymore.
No, I mean, so I think.
How am I going to feed my kids, Dave?
Well, there's probably like two ways to look at that, right? So with team managed projects, like what we're really focused on is, and what we're going to invest in, what we're investing in now, and you actually see this as a new fields page in team managed project settings that allows you to see like every field that's actually you explicitly say, here are the fields that are going to be used in this project. And then you can still go to each work type in the team managed project and choose which ones show up for that particular work type. But you have to, instead of just all the fields could be added to a screen, first you have to kind of say, like, these are the fields I'm going to use in this project. And then we're going to bring that to company managed projects too. But like one of the changes we're making there is, if you let everybody create team managed projects, and in every team managed project, every project admin can create new custom fields, like pretty soon you have a chaos of custom fields and duplicates everywhere, and like it's a complete mess. And the same is true for statuses and ultimately for some of the other objects.
Priorities, anything that you can
exactly.
make a lot of.
And so the first place we're really starting is like, hey, can we allow individual project admins to configure their workflow, configure their issue types, but only use like the globally shared custom fields. So like solve the like kind of object proliferation problem, so that you still you can kind of delegate the like, all right, you want a workflow that goes to do in progress testing done, and the other person wants a workflow that goes like to do in review in progress testing done. And as long as there's only one in review status and one testing status like used across that entire Jira instance, like that's what you really kind of care about as an admin, not that like two teams have two different workflows,
right?
And you can kind of delegate that out. And so we're going to try to get into like more of a more mature delegated admin model, where like a lot of the kind of what I would say is like lower value tasks, like, hey, add this step to the like the things that like you probably see like a lot of Jira admins do. It's like, ticket comes in, hi, I would like to add a new status to my project's workflow, and then you go in and like make the change and move on to the next ticket, right? It's like, can we delegate those out to the individual teams more to unlock the ability for and even if or alternatively, like you have an agent who is doing that work on your behalf as a Jira admin too. And it's like, that's not a big leap, I think, from like the scripting that a lot of admins do today. So it's not like that gives me confidence to say that, like, I don't think those are, making a minor change to workflow is really the work that a lot of Jira admins want to be doing anyway. That's not really how they unleash the value of Jira in their organizations. They unleash the value of Jira in the organizations by sitting down with a team and saying, like, hey, how do you work? How can I help you, map that work, that way of working into the objects that Jira has, the configuration, the way Jira works, and give you guidance and best practices, or look at, hey, we've got 20 different software development teams in this company and they all work a different way. And like, maybe there are some places where we can standardize, right? And so I think we want to get Jira admins out of the business of doing like the tedious clicking around of, making the UI changes in Jira, and into the, like, how do I enable teams to work better?
Right.
In the same way that, like, cloud migration, it's like, I'm going to get you out of the business of running database upgrade tasks and into the business of how do I get my teams
for one,
to work better?
I'm so happy. That's the reason I got out of being on data center, because the fact that I don't have to know anything about Postgres or anything like that anymore. I'm so happy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's applying the same concepts in just a couple of different ways.
So quick question from one of the people in the chat. They're wondering if there's going to be any UI changes to DC.
I'm
without getting you fired, Dave,
I'm responsible for the cloud product, but what we generally say is that, like, we're optimizing for, there's a set of customers that are on data center. Most of the data center customers that I talk to are they see cloud as their future, and it's just a matter of, like, what are the workloads that I can move to cloud now versus the ones that I'm going to need to wait for, either because of an Atlassian reason, like a compliance thing, or a customer reason, like, hey, we're really busy this year, we don't have budget until next year to do the set aside time in our staff to do the migration, right? So we're optimizing for cloud being the future, and, like, probably helping customers get there more than, like, making big changes to the Jira DC UI.
Yeah.
That's not to say there wouldn't be any changes, but it's probably not the best thing we could do for either our cloud customers or our DC customers.
It's super interesting. I don't normally spend a whole lot of time in DC, so I'm mainly in the cloud. So I love that you guys change it every day until you change a button on me. But one of the things that I've been learning recently, when like working with more data center customers, like, and again, maybe it's the lack of, I've never really used data center that much, and I did use server back in the day, like in 2016. But, like, for reasons you just described about having to be a sysadmin more than a Jira admin, I left that life behind because I did not want to. The first time Jira went down, so funny story. Our servers went down. We had a corrupted hard drive one time where Jira was on and Confluence, and all the documentation to bring Jira and Confluence back up was on that server that went down. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to the cloud.
Yeah, we actually think about that a lot, and it's like, we have to deal with the reality that, like, if Confluence went down and we had all of our docs on how to bring Confluence back up in Confluence Cloud, then, like, we have some redundancies.
Yeah. So I got burned by that before. But where I was going with this is, like, I'm listening to somebody today, and they're like, oh, Jira, Confluence or Jira, whatever the tool we're on, like, it needs to do this. I'm like, but it doesn't do that. And they're like, well, it doesn't in data center. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know. In the cloud, you don't have that much input. That's what I told them. Right? I'm like, what you see is what you get. Like, Atlassian ain't gonna go change the UI. Trust me, I've complained enough.
I think, and actually working, like, hands-on with a bunch of our data center customers that are migrating to cloud right now, those are, like, really some of the hardest issues that come up during the migration process to resolve. It's like, oh, you were like, if you take a step back, like, one of the big challenges with, like, a lot of migrations was, like, or just, like, how do we get cloud apps to be functionally equivalent to the apps that you're using on server or data center. And it's like, well, we had, it's not like we didn't have APIs in server and data center, but there's actually nothing restricting like the average Jira P2 plugin from doing whatever they wanted, modifying the front end however they wanted, accessing whatever methods on the back end that they wanted. And so it's like, oh, if you actually are limited to just like the defined UI extension points and the defined REST APIs, like there's a lot, even if we invest a ton, you can't quite do everything that you could do. And but the real gnarly ones are like, oh, the JavaScript insertion in the announcement banner, and it's like, oh, like we don't want users to be able to click this button. Like we'll just hide this button in the DOM, right? And
why do
like,
you think
those are the tough ones to really resolve?
But I'm assuming that decision came up from like maybe even Mike or Scott, right? Where it sounds like at the beginning, because I've heard rumors that back in the early days of Jira, like if you wanted to, you had access to the source code and you can change the UI yourself if you wanted to code it up, right?
I think that I don't know if the data center licenses today still give you source code access.
That's what I'm saying. Like at least 10, 15 years ago, if you had that,
you invalidated your support guarantee.
Did you really?
You modify the source code for the record.
But I'm just wondering, like you gave people, like I feel like in the early days, Atlassian gave their customers like an abundance of like freedom and like do what you want with what you will. $10 in perpetual licensing, and then all of a sudden Atlassian must have been like, wait, we need to make money somehow, right? And then, but like I don't know, like I think to me it didn't seem like good faith. Where again, you used to have this freedom, and now you have this walled garden you have to follow through.
Yeah, I think like that's a valid
harsh
characterization of, like, I mean, not the I don't think it was purely driven by like Atlassian saying like, oh, we have to make money, as much as like, one, it's just the nature of like on-premises software is that like you have a lot. If you are doing the work to keep the application running, and you have to connect to the database yourself and you have to run all the upgrades, then like, and you can pretty much change any aspect of it you want, and you could kind of take it as like kind of not an open source package, but basically like a piece of your ultimate like solution delivery stack as a IT department, and then like customize it as you would. And like that's ultimately just fundamentally different than like a software as a service model. And like I would argue that Atlassian, whether on Connect or on Forge, like still probably offers like far more customization and extensibility than like anything else on the market, like especially in terms of like customization and extension directly in the UI. Like if you contrast like what Atlassian offers versus like, it's not a perfect comparison, but like Slack, like you're really kind of constrained by like what you can do with like a prescribed set of like buttons and like a single pop-up dialog. You can't do any kind of like custom UI at all in Slack, right? And so the fact that like but like I think it's like we're trying to strike the right balance.
But the challenge has been though, like let's just take Monday.com. Monday.com has never given me the freedom to do it, and now all of a sudden I don't have it, right? I think that's kind of where some people probably get caught off guard, where like I used to be able to do it, but now I can't. But there's just a harsh reality. Like you're in a SaaS, and there's compromises you make. You used to have to worry about a lot of problems, and now you don't. So there's
that's exactly right. I think the challenge is like it's easy to, and I think it's easy for Atlassian to say, like that's the trade-off. Like hopefully, like the benefits outweigh the cons, and then then when it comes to like brass tacks, like all right, well we're trying to get this migration done in the next 6 months, and like, hey, actually this like hack that you put in, like there's like the hack was done 15 years ago, and 15 years of business processes in your large enterprise organization have been built around this hack that somebody did. Like that's when it becomes a real challenge, for us and for the customers.
Let's go a little deeper into trade-offs. Like you guys are such a global company, such a much bigger company, and over 13 years, how are trade-offs that you have to do internally, how have those evolved within Atlassian, or at least within your role as head of Jira? Because I'm assuming trade-offs back then 13 years ago would have been very different than you come up and go, Alex didn't like this button. How do we get it fixed?
It's in some ways yes, in some ways no. Like I think for me personally, like the trade-offs like look a lot different between when you're like the product manager working on how to like get the V1 of team managed projects out the door versus when you're like the head of product for Jira. So I definitely think about trade-offs a little bit differently now. But I think we probably thought more 10 years ago in terms of like, all right, like what's the trade-off between a little bit more complexity versus like the long run technical, some customers want this feature. A good example, priority schemes, like where
we wanted that in the cloud.
It was like they definitely felt the reality of like you probably want to have different sets of priorities for different projects, but we were also really realistic about like, hey, we don't necessarily think that like schemes are the easiest thing for folks to understand, and like long run we'd like to give people a different way to configure that doesn't require them to understand what a scheme was in order to make that possible. But so we were reluctant to do it, but eventually we did it just because we thought like, all right, like actually it's more important to like get this functionality out for customers, and like that was the fastest way to do it. I think how I think about trade-offs now are we probably have to have it's more about like, do we have the right allocation of investments? Atlassian, like I know that we need to reinvent how Jira works to be AI first and AI native, and at the same time, like we can't forget that like we really we know that we need to make a lot of elements of like the core jobs of creating work, looking at an overview like a collection of a bunch of different work items, whether it's in a list or on a board or in a filter or on a report or a dashboard, updating or commenting and collaborating on those pieces of work. Like all of those could be smoother and better and easier and more polished, and those are the things that really make Jira go from like a chore to use to a joy to use. But we also want to solve for new use cases, and we know that there's like new new features and new functionality that like why do we think we have 40,000 open feature requests in like on Jira.Atlassian.com, and the reality is
how much time
never
you
going to
spend
work
on
on 39,990 of them, but hopefully we're there's still become like a big input to how we think about the investments that we do make.
I was gonna let my wife go because I've been hogging the whole conversation.
I'm good.
Right.
You're talking about AI, right? And Jira. What is the future of Jira in the terms of the AI realm? Like I know you guys have Robo. It's like Robo gonna be more of a centric thing for Jira, or
yeah. I mean, I think if you watch the keynote from Team 25, like there's a slide in that keynote where I think Mike literally said the words, "We're putting Robo at the center of everything." So yes, is the short answer to your question. I think about AI and there's probably a 3-step process. One is, all right, like how are we using AI just to deliver the core functionality of Jira a little bit better? A good example of that is like just AI powered, can we make it easier for you to update a description, right? And so we can give you the ability to summarize and rewrite and edit it and be a little bit smarter about it. And then hopefully we can get a lot smarter about it, and like we build AI work create. So it's like, oh, instead of just selecting this bit of text in Confluence and creating an issue from it, like we'll actually like look at the entire page and synthesize like the right description. Or you can actually just, maybe it'd be better if you could just drop the Confluence link onto the Jira work item description, and like we automatically fill it out based on what you already written on the Confluence page. And so like those I would say are, or hey, there's a bunch of comments like this is actually the fastest growing AI feature in Jira right now is comment summaries. So you have 60 comments on this issue, and you want to just get an AI powered summary of what all of them said, so you don't have to read all of them. Great. That's
really,
step
yeah,
one.
that's so good. I've been using that one.
Great. So a lot of folks, myself included, very handy for like big feature request tickets where a lot of people have commented with their use case. The second opportunity, I think, is with how can we help the teams that are planning and tracking their work, not just like in an individual work item, but like in groups of work items, do that better. And so we introduced AI work breakdown over the past year, and have been iterating on that feature. So you can take an epic and say generate all the parent tasks, or sorry, child tasks, the stories.
Don't worry, if you ever need somebody
well, that's the thing, like, and that's kind of the terminology issue that we need to solve too. It's like, well, not everybody knows what an epic is. Everybody has that idea, like, I have a project and I have a breakdown of the work in the project, and I want to, and then what we'll do, we'll introduce more agents around, like, how do I groom my backlog? How do I like organize those issues? Like, like I need to make the same field update, but not quite the same. So I can't just do a bulk edit, but like I need to update 30 different tasks at once. Like, let me have the agent go do it. But those are still, hey, you're still working with humans who are assigned all the tasks, and you just need to like take some of the toil of like doing the management in Jira and make that simpler. And then like the third big opportunity is around like agents who will actually take on more of the work itself, right? And so, like, think about a software development agent today, and like, hey, why don't I just I need to have acceptance criteria written, and it's like, why don't I just mention the agent and say, like, please add the acceptance criteria, like, here's the purity and confluence, and like paste the link into you put that in like the comment on the Jira task, and like they go in and add the acceptance criteria, or like, hey, there's actually a pull request open for it, and I need it to be reviewed. Why don't you just assign it to the agent and to the pull request reviewer agent, and they can go review the pull request itself. I think, and we see, it won't just be Atlassian, Atlassian providing those agents Rovo, but like, we're building Studio for customers to build their own agents, and like I think we expect that like a huge ecosystem will build agents for Atlassian, or just agents generally out in the world that like will need to interact with work just like Jira. And so we're thinking long term about how does Jira become that orchestration layer for all of the agents.
Very well said. In the last 3 minutes here, Dave, want to have a little bit of fun. You can't team manage projects is not an answer, but over your 13-year career here, what's the most favorite thing you've ever worked on at Atlassian? And it can't be team managed projects.
Oh. Oh man, honestly,
too many to count?
Yeah, I mean, team managed projects is my answer.
It can't be that one. It can't, because that's the one that breaks my heart every single time I have to say this word.
It'd be a two. So I got to work on the first version of like the Jira app for Slack. That was really fun. And then the other, so I'd say like that was one project that really stands out, was just like going from like, hey, you need to configure webhooks from Jira to send the webhooks to Slack, and then Slack will do things with them to like, actually we're going to have a Jira app that you can talk to, and when you mention a Jira issue, an issue key and a number, like we're going to automatically go find it and paste in all the details for you. Like that was really cool. And then the last feature where I was really like the day-to-day PM and not a manager of PMs was sandboxes across all the products. So the sandbox functionality in cloud. So as much as it might seem banal, like I had a lot of fun being like, all right, how do you create a sandbox? How do you do the data copying and sandboxes? I think there's still more work to do to make that a great experience.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of work there.
Launching sandboxes at all was better than not having sandboxes, and so that was fun work on.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for being here. We want to be very mindful and respectful of your time. So thank you for joining us and for giving us that insight. And hopefully we don't get anybody in trouble. But those team managed projects, man, I swear, I tell everybody that when you're using Jira, I'm like, when you're going to pay for Jira, it's like buying a Ferrari. You want to use those company managed projects because you get everything. But not everybody is qualified to drive a Ferrari. So sometimes it makes sense to have a Corolla as well.
I mean, I'd say it's more like a Williams racing car than a Ferrari, but to each their own.
Yeah. All right. We'll have to adapt it. For when I came up with the analogy, our F1 integration wasn't there yet. So yes, it's like driving an F1 Williams car versus a Corolla. And so
Perfect.
Some people.
Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you, Dave.
Really, I could do this for a whole nother hour.
Yeah, I know. Well, we only got the 3 of our 10 questions we had for you. So
sorry about that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. I'm not used to the we didn't choose the Jira Life. The Jira Life chose us. Sorry, I don't end the shows. I usually have Rodney do all this.